And take it away, Mr. Jones.
And how is everybody doing today? Hopefully, everybody is doing well and amazing. We want to welcome you all to the Hello LLC. If you don't know what Hello stands for, then I'm here to share with you. Hello stands for helping entrepreneurs leverage leading edge optimizations. And more importantly, it's a done for you system. We want more for you than from you at the end of the day. And really, what we're doing is we're helping people pivot from 2D to 3D, getting rid of that crusty, dusty website, getting rid of that crusty, dusty landing page, and definitely showcasing a newer way to implement and utilize Zoom as we utilize this metaverse, as we utilize AI. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have an amazing conversation as we always do. And earlier this week, we had an amazing conversation for our helpful how-tos where we talked about how to monetize your podcast and your brand, especially utilizing Web3, and then understanding that your brand is you. You are your brand. And instead of just selling, you have to showcase your brand and you have to be able to put yourself everywhere on all these social media platforms. And then on Thursday, we had an amazing conversation and we talked about crypto curious. Why learn and why you should learn now, especially for those of you that are entrepreneurs and businesses. It's time to start learning how you can implement and how you can take other sources of income other than just that dollar bill. And so we continue to bring to you guys forward thinking thought processes, helping you really understand that times are changing, things are changing, and we have our amazing other half, Miss Tara. Love, what did you take from this week's conversation, that we continuously have every single week?
Well, first of all, it's so good to be here, but it's the power of Web3, and what comes after 2 is 3. And so it's inevitable for us to move into Web3. And what our goal is every week and each and every week is to bring information to share with everybody in our community just how Web3 is already a part of your life and you just might not know it, and how you can actually utilize that as an opportunity to extend a comfort of life that you are looking to live. Right. So really at the end of the day, it's discussing that how to monetize your business. It's discussing about how cryptocurrency is important to pay attention to now. A lot of times that word cryptocurrency is a buzzword that people either shy away from or they're very curious about. And so what our intent is when we have these conversations is really just to break down that information, knowledgeable information. It's not about how to, advice of where you need to be investing, but it's about for you to understand the level, the playing field, so it can be level, so you have an equal opportunity to take a part of the move as we do from Web 2 to Web 3. So I'm excited about, our conversation that we have today with our amazing guests. And we're going to get this rocking and rolling with this, but we want to share with you guys. If you enjoy this, like this, share this with your community. Today is going to be a great conversation, and we'll bring our guest up here right now so we can introduce Miss Theresa Carpenter. There she is. We'll get her beautiful face right here in the middle. There she is, front and center.
Hello.
Hi, Miss Theresa. We're going to give you an amazing introduction right now. Miss Theresa, you guys, is a part of the she's an active duty naval commander. She's done that for 10 years in enlisted time, where she's also served a total of 28 years in combination. Currently, she's living across the pond in the UK. She's the Chief Public Affairs Officer of NATO's Allied Maritime Command. Say that 3 times fast. Her passions include helping people, protecting animals, something that speaks to my heart, moving past traumatic experiences, speaking up for positive change, and the professional development of the craft of public relations. And really, guys, at the end of the day, she's a reflective writer who loves to talk about the human experience in her blog, Theresa's Tapestries, as well as published several media outlets and trade presses, notably War Horses and the Public Relations Society of America. She has her own podcast, so she is an experienced podcaster as well, SOS, Stories of Service, which she started in April 2020 and has over 130 episodes where she has interviewed people of all walks of life who have shared their stories with you. And ultimately, guys, she is a co-author of the book Complicated Alliances, an anthology that tells the stories and struggles of women who have served in the military and those who have married to ones that have served. And with that said, Welcome, Miss Theresa. How are you? So glad to have
I'm
you.
good. Thank you. It's so good to talk to you, Tara. It's so good to talk to you, David. We've known each other for a long time now. You were there at the beginning when the podcast was just an idea and I was building, and now here we are 2 3 years later, and it's still going strong. And I think it's actually now 3 years because you were right around the time I started the show. So thank you so much for having me on and being such amazing partners to work with. I still use the business in a box, and I'm very, very happy with the relationship that I've built with the two of you over the years.
Well, we greatly
Absolutely.
appreciate.
No, it's
Sorry, love.
go ahead, love. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say we greatly appreciate it. It's been, David shared that the other day. It's been 3 years, maybe a little over 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's just time flies when we're having fun, and we get to watch you on your SOS podcast and really be able to make the impact that you said you were going to do. And so it's not so much of the talk, it's the greatness to watch you actually walk the walk. So over to you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. That makes me sad, but thank you. Like sad in a good way.
Well, trust me, there's room for tears later, especially when you talk about animals and things. But with your amazing career and all the things that you've done, let's back up a little bit. Throughout your journey, what made you say, you know what, I'm gonna go into the Navy? What was that story like? Talk to us.
Oh God, Terry. So Terry Pickard was the person who joined the Navy at the age of 19 after a slew of dead-end jobs. I think since the age of 14, I had been working McDonald's. I had bussed tables. I worked at a Mexican restaurant as a hostess. I was at call centers, most notably Victoria's Secret catalog, back when there was the giant catalogs that you could flip through. I was on the call center selling what was called miracle bras, of all things, that were supposed to push your boobs up, push them together. So that was one of the many jobs I did. And it got to a place where I was really feeling uninspired, unfulfilled. And I watched as all my friends were going off to college, and my parents couldn't afford to spend money on my tuition. And I knew that if I kept going down this road without any education, without any formalized training, without any skills, without knowing what I wanted to do when I grew up, I was just going to have to keep working 2 or 3 jobs. And I didn't have really good money management skills back then. So I was starting to run into debt on really silly credit card issues. And the Navy was appealing because it was a way for me to travel, see the world. I had a gentleman that I was sort of dating at the time, and a male roommate who both talked me into it at the same time, because nobody from Columbus, Ohio typically joins the United States Navy. So not like I was from a military town. I didn't have military family, none of that. And they gradually worked on talking me into it to where I thought, wow, this might be a way for me to earn some money, learn a trade, travel the world. And here we are 28 years later.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. Well, guess what? We have some things in common. I, too, also worked at Victoria's Secret right after 9/11. There was where, everybody gives me that face. Right after 9/11, they weren't hiring. And so I had to be able to get a job. And I walked by, and the guy said, hey, you looking for a job? Because I had a whole bunch of applications in my hand. And I said, yeah. He said, hey, come back tomorrow, and you can probably get a job here. And I dressed up, and I brought my resume, and the lady looked at me like just up and down. One time she said, you're hired. And I was a stalker in the back, just stocking the lotions and perfumes. And one of the sales ladies didn't show up to work. She said, hey, how good are you at sales? I said, I can do it. First day, everybody out of the water. And I never went back into the back room. And it was crazy because where the ladies would try on their bras, I would have to walk past the actual dressing rooms, and that you could see them because you could see the face. Like, what are you doing back here? I'm like, I work here. I'm going in the back. And so just a funny story when you said that.
I didn't even know they hired men at Victoria's Secret, the stores. I worked at the catalog, where Ohio is from, where Les Wexner, who was the founder of all the limited brands. And so I worked in the corporate offices of Victoria's Secret. So I just worked on a call floor, but you actually worked at one of the storefronts. That is hilarious, David. Wow.
Oh man. Well, you say 28 years. In the blink of an eye, it's probably, probably seemed a long time, but also probably feels like it was just yesterday at some points, I'm sure. But, what were some of the key challenges through your 28 years that you've really had to kind of maybe overcome, through just life?
I would say that the hardest challenge and probably what led me to starting my podcast was the fact that I just didn't think that somebody like me would fit in. I've always been a little bit on the artsy side, and I've always been kind of quirky, kind of a geek. And I thought like there was just no way I was going to find my footing. And I even remember in boot camp, I always kind of walked with like a chip on my shoulder and seemed a little entitled, but really I was just scared shitless. I don't know if I can say that on these podcasts,
Yeah.
but I was just scared out of my mind that this was going to be what I was going to be expected to perform to. And I felt such like an imposter. And I think throughout my career, that's definitely been a theme where I remember my first aircraft carrier, and well, not my first, like my third, but my first as a public affairs officer. And I was a department head, which was a pretty high rank for where I was. And I just remember being around all these, like, what I thought was same age as me, really, but these middle-aged married men. And there's just me, the only female department head. And I just felt so out of place. So I think that's probably been my biggest challenge, is feeling like I fit in and belong. And I'll tell you, it's been hit or miss. Some environments have been amazing and the leadership is great. And then other places it has been a struggle. So I think finding my people and finding a sense of purpose has always been like that guiding light. And that's how I worked through it, was because I always went back to the fact that I know I'm a good communicator. I know I'm authentic. I know that I perform. I know that I get results. And I know that I now know even that I can inspire teams. I don't think I understood that really before this job. But at this job, I've really seen that if you hold yourself to the same standard as you do your people and you set the example, your people are loyal to you.
I love it. And that leads me, to the next question of when we talk about leadership, right?
Mhm.
Over the last 28 years, how have you seen your leadership skills change over the years?
That's a great question, David. So when I first started, I was an enlisted, very junior person, and all I did was follow. And I saw that there were people I respect and I would follow to the end of the earth. And then there were people who didn't set the example and didn't do the things that I would want to see in a leader. And I remember it would just make me feel demotivated, and it would demoralize me. And so I always knew that once I found my confidence, I wasn't going to be that kind of leader. And so the first thing I had to do was get to a point where I was really confident within my own self about the skills that I have as a professional communicator. So I had to learn how to do the things. And that took quite a number of years, because as an enlisted person, I spent 10 years enlisted. I got to a point where I was okay at fixing the aircraft, but I was never what I would say like the person that would save the day, that would, chase the schematic, what we call, where the wires are. And really, and I never got to that place. Whereas as a public affairs officer, I can save the day, and I can go and talk to a 4-star the same way I can talk to a person who's just joined the Navy. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not intimidated by leadership or by prestige or power. And so that has really been what has helped me build my skills as a leader, is knowing that I can help people know how to properly respond. Even if I don't understand exactly what to do, I know who to consult, and I know how to gather consensus and to come up with a way ahead, considering all alternatives. Because there's no right or wrong answer in our business. It's just this constant, like, navigating what will be the right thing to say to the press, or what will be the right response when something happens. So I think that has been the way that my leadership has grown, is as my competency and confidence in my craft increased, my leadership skills became better because I was more unafraid to say no to certain things. And I wasn't afraid to take on certain things because I knew at the end of the day, if I had to do it, I could do it.
Yeah. It's beautiful when you're, sharing that, because it's kind of like when you're talking about chasing the schematics, the wiring of the airplane, and you're like, that's not really my bread and butter. That was not where I was excelling at. And then you share that when you moved over to the public relations side, you're like, whoa, like a kind of just a flower in bloom to understand this is what I really do well. And it's so intriguing, because as I was listening to you, I am the schematics girl. I am the systems, the process. I would in it. That literally, the moment you said it, I'd been like, oh, I would have found it like that, because that's just where I'm wired. But when you talk about public relations, I'm like, it's just so intriguing that as humans, where one person can say one thing and they're like, I'm not really good. You're like, oh yeah, I'm really good at that. But then the other, and so just with that, how have you been able to manage your multiple roles through not only the Navy, but with your podcast and with your writing and with your personal life of wanting to be out there with your, beautiful Jada and, helping other animals? How have you been able to balance that?
I think the best way that I can describe it is that I have to have really good boundaries. So there are things that I've instilled into my workday that are probably controversial to the Navy, or controversial to not really NATO, because it's a little bit more laid back there. But I leave every day at 3 p.m. And when I leave, I go home and I walk my dog or I work out. And I don't leave if there's something pressing or if there's some crisis. But if everything is going the way that workday ought to, I leave. My people get up to 2 days work from home a week if business schedules allow. I don't give myself work from home, but I give them that. And they love it because our office is like a hurricane every single day with people who need things. And sometimes those same people can send an email and sometimes somebody else in the office has to step up. It's not their day to work from home, and they have to deal with the customer service, as I would say, requests that come in. And we've made ourselves very popular on one platform in particular, LinkedIn. I have a personal goal even to build more followers right now and beat another command on their followers. So I've probably created some of the demand, or our team has created some of this demand, but it's a good thing. And we're very proud of it. But it does involve, like you say, having guardrails and boundaries. Another boundary I have is I take a lot of trips. So next week I'm going to Latvia, Riga, for another work conference that thankfully my boss approved for me to go. And then the week after that, I'm going on a cruise ship. And I'm very transparent with my workplace on the fact that I take time off, and I expect my people to take time off. And then when we're in the office, I expect them to perform, or working from home, they perform. And what we ultimately want is to serve our bosses and to serve the NATO mission and to do it the best way we know how. And I know people who are working hard at home or working in the office, and they feel like their needs are going to be met, are ultimately going to produce the best possible products. And that's what I've seen from my people day in and day out for the last 2 years.
I think you said something so key there that I wish a lot of people would, maybe might have missed, is basically the balance that you're creating for not only yourself, but your team. And that is because you're creating that balance for yourself, or those guardrails, those boundaries. But the fact that you allow your team, and I speak from experience of being able to have communication about, is it, do you prefer having 2 days, from work from home? Because I understand the hurricane environment of a workplace. And very often that was when I was in corporate America, I experienced the same thing. And it was like the only time I could get production work done was when I was at home in a quiet environment. And as you say, those people who love to just get up and walk over to your desk and ask you a question, you're like, this could have been done in an email, or through the chat channels that we have. But I do understand that. And I want to give you large kudos for that, because I don't think people realize how much that will change an environment, whether it's within an entrepreneurial way of a business like ours, or whether you're working in a team of at NATO, where you're able to really allow people to have that balance still within still having integrity of the position, getting the position done, and making sure that everybody's taken care of. Because again, if we burn out, then who is going to be left to be able to do that? And that was a lot of what's happening, I think, and you hit the nail on the head. So I want to give you big kudos for that, because not enough people do give a lot of kudos on there. So,
well, thank you. And what I've learned is that what I'm talking about happens all over the work sector. There are people who are talking about this issue in corporate America. They're talking about it in nonprofit world, and they're talking about it in government environments. So I know that this is something that all of us can do, but it takes leadership, and it takes a cultural awareness and understanding that this is important. And I don't think the military yet has adopted this. We still have meetings that should last 10 minutes, 20 minutes max, that last over an hour. We still do death by PowerPoint. We still read off of prepared speeches. We're still doing so many things that don't enable communications and don't really work for us, but it's because it's what we've always known to do. So we just continue to do it, even though it's not working. And so hopefully I'm shedding some light that those hour-long meetings could really just be a 20-minute or even a 10, 15-minute around the room. What do you have going on? What do we need to work out? And make it a more of a small group thing, instead of like, I hate to say it, but I will, I got 3 months left, like my morning military update brief that lasts sometimes almost an hour, and all like 50, 60 people are on it. And it's like, I just don't know if that's really the best use of our time. So I think those kinds of things do need to be discussed, because I know that's not just a military thing.
Well, that is why the Hello LLC is here, and that is why we continuously, showcase the new wave of, technology. And Tara will bring up, our Hello Plaza, where literally it will be able to, change the way we look at Zoom, change the way we look at interacting with each other, and really take us to the next level, to where, like you said, us getting off of the screen and showing up in an avatar, getting rid of, the PowerPoint slides, and really being able to get rid of that Zoom fatigue, where we're all just sitting there like this, forever, where now you get to show up in an avatar and showcase it in a different way, especially with podcasts, as we did with Miss Roberta Pacino, Al Pacino's sister, earlier this week, where she took her whole entire podcast, and now it's in the metaverse, to where she doesn't have to just show it, on LinkedIn or show it on YouTube. It literally creates an immersive experience. And this is where companies are going, especially with the travel time. I remember that as a C-level, vice president for a company, I remember those days where we used to tell our employees, don't do this, you can't do this, and have that mentality, rah. I mean, I literally got written up one time because I went to go see my sister's last volleyball game that they knew about like 6 months beforehand, and I got in trouble for that. And so the mentality of the workplace, the mentality of society, and just overall, I think we're starting to understand that our energy, our frequency, our vibration all depends on how we take care of ourselves, and working us to the bone and doing these activities that are just old and outdated. They have to go away. And people like us, people like you that are speaking up saying, hey, enough is enough. We got to change. And then even more importantly, these youngsters, the average age is 30 years old on this planet Earth. They are definitely shouting from the mountaintops and saying, forget your college, forget your Zooms, forget all of this stuff. And we got to be able to do something different. So yes, those of us that are more experienced on this earth, we want to hold on to these traditions of the rah. Those days are over and done with, and we have to make the pivot, as we do in so many other ways. And so, speaking of your amazing podcast, right? Share with us more, about your podcast and what your true message is that people should know about.
So my podcast is called Stories of Service, or SOS for short. And the tagline is Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And what I always wanted with that is to show that everyone can be a change agent. Everybody's got a story to tell. I try to focus on people who are doing something that is out of the box, that some people who've taken a huge risk, or I wouldn't say a risk, people who have really sacrificed something to do whatever it is they're doing. Whereas it could be just sharing a story of something painful. It could be creating a service that is really unique and out of the box. For an example, I just had a former sex crimes prosecutor who has now become an intimacy coach because she was so burnt out by the way that juries will not convict people of sex crimes when it's somebody you know, which is something I didn't know, but it's because it's like you don't want to think that that's something that could happen. And so she wanted to get at the root of the issue. And so she found that by counseling women on their intimacy issues, she was able to make a bigger impact. I mean, that just gives me chills even telling you guys that story, because it's such a neat way to see that problem from another service. And she challenges monogamy and all these things, and kinks and things that like nobody talks about. And especially in my military community, no one talks about. So I loved having her on. And that was what I started this show, was to bring voices to my show that might not normally get that opportunity to really have a voice. And I love showcasing influencers. So young influencers, like you said, David, that think differently and expect something new. I just had one on yesterday. It was great. Zarina Fleming. So she was amazing and so inspiring. And then I have those controversial people that are in the military space, and they're making waves, and they're talking about petitions to Congress, and they're calling out the Department of Defense for the investigative process. And then Tab, you're on the a broadcast with us today, and Tab Bartley, she goes by Blunt Bartley, and she just tells it like it is. And she's a former Marine, now works with the Department of Agriculture, I believe, and also has her own podcast. And it's just wonderful. I get to meet all these great people, David. I know I'm kind of rattling on and on, but I'm so excited about the show and what it has brought. I can't wait to hopefully meet some of the people from my show and people I've admired on other shows at the Military Influencer Conference in Atlanta this September. Shout out to Parade Deck. They also like working with you. I work with them. They're another media company, and they just do so many amazing things. So yeah, it's just been such a ride and a pleasure to do this.
Yeah. And this is something that we share with people all the time, is that having your podcast allows us to share our story, because your story is your glory. And it also allows us to help other people with their landmines that they need to navigate through. And then also for us to remember how far up the mountain we've came. And we encourage everybody to have a podcast, especially if you want to get your message out there, especially if you're a business entrepreneur. Gary Vee was just sharing this the other day, and it's amazing that we just did a room on this on Tuesday. And here it is, Gary Vee saying, everyone should have a podcast, because you get to monetize, you get to showcase, you get to present yourself in a completely different way. And this is the new wave. Just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a podcast that could go globally, that everybody has access to, you would have to pay millions for that. And yet it takes for us to get out of our fear, right? A lot of people say false evidence appearing real, but we always share with people that fear is focused energy arranged to react. What are you focused on? How is that arranged, right? Or where's your energy at? How is that arranged? And when we're reacting in life, and don't be scared. You can have a 1-minute podcast, a 2-minute podcast. You don't have to go live like we are right now. You can jump into the metaverse and have your avatar speaking, have it pre-recorded, and then do another launch. And so there's so many different ways that we all can be able to get our voice out there. And don't be afraid, because the one thing we share with people, open up the 4 most expensive things: a closed mind, a closed mouth, a closed heart, and a closed hand. And a lot of the times we live our lives with those things closed, when we need to open them up, and then we wait till it's too late to say something when we could have impacted somebody else, or we could have impacted ourselves, more important.
Man, David, you're on fire. Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I'm just like exclamation point, mic drop moment. I agree with you 100%. It is so empowering and inspiring to be able to do this. And I only wish that all the branches of the service had an official podcast. In fact, I had just heard that I think the UK Air Forces are now going to do, I think my colleague at work told me they're going to start their own podcast, but every branch of the service, the Department of Defense should have a podcast. I believe NATO has just started, at least for their 75th anniversary, they started a historical podcast. So that's a start. Although I think one that talks about current events would be even more interesting. So hopefully they'll transition to that. But I agree. I think that, like, especially as public communicators, for my public relations people out there in the audience, when you have a crisis, this is the way to get in front of that crisis. So if something happens in your command and you will need an instant way to get your message out there, empower your leaders to go on camera live, not be at a stuffy podium at the desk with just traditional media. Like, I get it. I just shared a post about, the traditional news podium people. And I think that's great too. And that's getting the big players and the heavy hitters out there in front of the media. But every single one of them could be doing this. And it's a lost opportunity to communicate with the public, communicate with your stakeholders. It really is. If I could have had an Allied Maritime podcast, I would have jumped all over it. But there just wasn't the bandwidth, the manning, the buy-in to do that, because I just think it really gets your message out there, David. You're absolutely right.
I will say this from a podcast stance. 10 years ago, I share that I was very broken-minded. I was a very smart individual. I still am, but it's very broken-minded because of where my priorities were and not really being in tune with myself. And it was a podcast, several podcasts actually, that allowed me to have the aha light bulb moment to go, this is not what I want to be doing or the path that I want to be going down, which was essentially a very materialistic lifestyle through corporate America as a corporate American executive, and realizing that I wasn't out servicing not only myself, through being able to help others, but also being in the tune of having boundaries, as you shared, those guardrails. And so I don't think people understand how impactful listening to stories of other people just talk, because we are creatures of wanting to be able to belong, to fit in. You were just talking about this, when you talked about your challenges, through your years at the Navy, is being able to belong and fit in and think, I'm not alone. There's other people experiencing this. And you are absolutely correct. If we would start seeing a little less of the mass media approach and a lot more of the belly to belly media approach, which is podcasting, I think we would see a huge change down at the level that they want to see the change of people being able to get the buy-in, as you say, because a lot of times I don't know if the mass media outlet is a trusted source as much as it used to be anymore. And I'm putting that very politically correct and not trying to get myself on any list. But my point being is just understanding times are changing, and this is a real way for people to be able to communicate as you share. And so, as you're talking about, and you just lit up when you talk about your SOS podcast, you shared, a story that really was impactful with the young lady who had seen so much in the, kind of sexual assault world and being able to come over and turn that into a positive thing. What is out of the 3+ years that you've been running your podcast, what is that one story that just sticks out to you, whether it was because it moved you so much or it tore at your heartstrings so much? What's that one story that is there?
Crystal Romero. It was just recently. She served in the Army National Guard, and her story really began with her feeling like she was doing all the work in her office while a female colleague who had family ties to leadership was getting a pass, and she was getting dumped with all the duties and responsibilities. And instead of her office dealing with that issue, they basically spent years letting Crystal take over everything and do everything, to the point where Crystal felt as though she had no other option but to start to have mental health problems and start to break down because of the way that she felt she was being treated. And it's just an example of where, if this had been caught early on with the right leadership, it would have never got to this point. And now here we are 10, 15 years later. I mean, and she's still trying to get her records corrected. She's still trying to see if she can get a proper discharge, a discharge that she feels she deserves. And she spent so much money on lawyers and all these other things, and still doesn't have the justice that she feels that she deserves. And it's just sad. It sucks that she doesn't get this. And anything she gets back from her investigation is heavily redacted. There's so much secrecy around it, and it's not a transparent process. And it's stemming from the fact that there's just no sense of accountability from the government when it comes to administrative investigations. It's a bigger problem than Crystal. She's just a victim of it. And it really just brought home what the impacts are of a system that's not transparent in how it investigates, how you can't choose your own witnesses, how they can just decide open and shut whether or not they want to truly investigate, how investigators aren't even trained. Every lawyer I've had on my show has said the same thing about the military justice system, and it still hasn't changed. And even if you have a defense attorney on who goes up against the DOD or the Department of Defense or the branches of the service, they'll tell you the same thing, that it's really just about if the commanding officer is ethical and is fair, in which sometimes they are, and in fact probably a lot of times they are. But when they're not, there's no accountability for it. And so those kinds of stories really tear at my heartstrings, because I know that a solution is possible with the right leadership. But until a congressional inquiry or a congressional law, until a statute gets passed that mandates that these investigations get done differently, this process will continue to happen. So those stories really break my heart, and I have a lot of them to share. I mean, I have a lot of people who want to go on my show, but normally what I have to do when I do these shows is I have to have a phone call with somebody beforehand, and I have to assess if I can take on the story. And I did that with Crystal. And I've done it with every person that I've had on who's shared one of these stories. And I've probably had on about 10 maybe at this point. And so they're really hard, because there's so much she said, he said, and a lot of times there's no such thing as a perfect victim. There's no such thing as a perfect perpetrator. These stories are never black and white. And really all you just want for these people is for them to feel some sort of closure from this situation. And so it just breaks your heart to listen to them. And I wish Crystal all the best. She knows I think the world of her, and she's still fighting her case. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think about that when you're sharing that, and just understanding kind of the lay of the land. Not that I've spent any military time, but understanding kind of that lay of the land as you've shared, and I've researched others part of that and seen those cases. And I'm curious for you, because you just said it, you have to kind of call and, make an assessment before you go live about a story.
Oh, yeah. Live.
Yeah. And I really do, because it's kind of like the David and Goliath a little bit when I hear this, and it's kind of like, being a little, shaking the cage a little, and that's can be a little we just all kind of know what that can be. And so kudos to you, because being able to understand where that line is, where you can and cannot, and and again, being able to get these stories out there, because again, we resonate with these stories. People, there will be so many people that will be impacted by Crystal's story and be like, same thing's happening to me. We need to come together. And that's the beauty of the world we're in right now. But it's also the ugly side of the world that we're in right now, is that we are even going through these trials and tribulations. And so I would say, kudos to you because of that line of understanding of where you can and cannot go across in that whole bridge of things. So
yeah, I mean, it's like you can't say the person's name, because then if she says a name, it could be considered, libel or slander, or
defamation.
or defamation, right? So there's that. And then a lot of times, especially in Crystal's story, she's calling out people who are very, very senior in the particular National Guard unit that she was in, got people in the governor's staff. I mean, this stuff goes really far. And so it is tough. I mean, I struggle a lot even today with like how much I criticize the Navy, because there's a lot of public affairs officers who do not like what I'm doing. And I've even had a public affairs officer who said, "Why did you leave that comment? You're not making my life any better, Theresa." And it's just like, I mean, I'm not saying it is Theresa, the public, in my official capacity, but in my personal capacity, I do believe we should have First Amendment rights. And I do believe that there should be transparency. But then you're right. At the same time, it's like, do I really? I mean, some of these people are my colleagues. They're shipmates. They're friends. They're trying to do a job too. And so, and I don't know the whole story. And I always say that too. I mean, it isn't as though I always slam the DOD or slam the military. I want the full story. I want the other side. I welcome for more senior leaders to come onto my show and to talk about issues. If I had a 4-star admiral that's still serving that said, "I want to be on the SOS podcast and I want to address this issue," I'd say, "Great, come on. Let's have this conversation." And I talked to some other podcasters that are just like me, permission to speak freely and don't give up the ship. And we all feel the same. We're all like the ones that will really kind of touch on the hard issues. And we all say, like, we would welcome a lot of them, but it's generational. They didn't grow up with social media. They didn't grow up talking this way. They don't understand podcasting, and they just want to use those traditional media channels. They just want to talk to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the CBS News, all those places. They don't understand, though, that that's not where their audience is anymore. Their audience is so fragmented, and where they're really getting their news and their information are from YouTubers and podcasters. And so I have hope, though, that in time, I just had Tim Parlatore on my show. He was a lawyer for Eddie Gallagher. He's also been a lawyer for Trump. He's very prominent, and he gets all this. And he also agrees that we need to clean up the military justice system. He saw it firsthand when he was defending Eddie Gallagher. And so that gives me hope. I mean, Tim's kind of like the younger crop that's coming up through the leadership ranks. And I have a feeling that Tim's going to go very far in whatever he ends up doing and wherever he goes. So I have hope that we'll have some new type of people that come in and can really lead and can make these kinds of decisions that I think will be better in terms of where we put our messages out there.
I love it. I love it. And as we talk about, innovation and changing things, if you could, share with people when we first met you at the Hello LLC,
Yes.
what you were dealing with, how you were going through, your business, your side hustles, as we talked about, right?
Yep.
And what we were able to do for you, with our platform, and where it's really, taking you to this point.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first contacted you guys, of all things, I don't even know if people still use Clubhouse. You guys can tell me if people do, if that's still a thing. Is it good? Okay, good. I haven't been on there in probably 2 years, but that's where I met you guys. You were on a Clubhouse chat. I don't even remember which room or anything, but I just remember you were talking about this Hello LLC briefcase, and you had a couple people on there that had used it. And I looked at the link, and I just saw how visually appealing it was. And I saw that it looked so professional, and it matched the people who you profiled. I remember you had a country music star. I think you may still have him as one of the briefcase people. And I just remember, yeah. And I remember thinking, wow, this is like so well thought through. and this isn't something that I've seen anyone else do. Anybody can have a link tree, anybody can have a website, but I've never seen something that really matched somebody's personality and who they were, and everything from your brand colors to your choice of fonts to the layout of the way the links looked. And so, just to give you guys a backstory, they provided me basically a one-stop shop for all of my links, for all my social media channels, for everything, using I forget the brand of the Hello LLC, Beacons, using a Beacons account. But it's all personally designed and crafted. So from the channels, and then as my brand has changed, and as I've added things, as I've needed new blocks, I can contact you guys, and immediately David gets back to me, like within, gosh, not even a day, less than a day. And we just go through a process to add a new block. Or I think I added my Airbnb. I added Parade Deck recently. So we just keep adding to it and making it better as I move forward with my brand and the things that I'm building. So it's been wonderful, and that you guys are still at it. I'm still at it. So it's worked out quite nicely.
I love it. I love it. And then, with you joining us in our Hello Plaza and Metaverse, we always share with people, about this third dimension, this third generation, us going from these block cell phones to this new metaverse, which is the future. You join us in our Hello Plaza. Can you share with people, how easy was it for you to join our metaverse today?
Oh, it was super simple. And it was really cool. Like, I don't know anything about the virtual world. So it was this whole new immersive experience where, wow, like I'm excited to just play around with it some more and learn what I can do with it, because you guys are always at the edge of like, what's next, what's new, how do we work on this? And that's something I'm not really that comfortable with. So I think it's amazing that you guys are doing this. But yeah, no, I played around with it a little bit. You can see I'm in the middle. Tara's on the left, and David, you're on the right. And it's just kind of this really neat, like, interactive experience where I think at some point we'll be able to take our podcasts, and instead of being on StreamYard, we can go from this and broadcast out. So I'm excited to play around with it. Like I said, I've never even heard of metaverse until you guys introduced me to this concept, but I'm open to learning, and I'm going to be an adapter. I'm not maybe an innovator. I'm a little bit older, but I will be an adapter.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we share with people, is that this metaverse doesn't have an age limit. A lot of times when people hear AI and technology, that, oh, well, that's for the youngsters. That's not for me. I'm beyond that. I remember listening to my parents. Well, that's for y'all, and we all at some point remember, oh, that MySpace, no, that's for the youngsters. They're dancing on there. Facebook, they're dancing on there. Instagram, they're dancing on there. TikTok, they're dancing on there. And all of y'all asses are on there. Which
That's so true, David. It's like we trivialize it by saying, oh, they just dance on that thing. And then really it just becomes like the next thing that everyone's using.
Exactly. And that's exactly what this does, especially when you were talking about earlier, those long, boring Zoom calls, right? These meetings that have to take place, all this interaction where a lot of these companies are realizing, hey, we can have, not only our internal, but also our external, to where these youngsters want an actual immersive experience, to where we get from shopping on Amazon, extra large, extra medium. These are the colors, now you can jump in here with an avatar that literally knows all of this stuff. And you can go and shop in a completely different way and then meet up with your friends. And so this literally takes it to a whole new level, and not just with the shopping. This is with business. This is with, community. This is with anything you can possibly think of. And something that you talked about earlier, right, with you being an artist. We all are artists at the end of the day. An artist is nothing more than the inner child that survived the ego. And a lot of the times we forget to go back to that artistic way and being a kid and having fun. And that's exactly what this allows us to do, is when we opened up that Sega Nintendo, or, we opened up the Super Nintendo, or all these games, we got immersed in it. And we as a society have grown up on this. Now we can have our business gamified in our 3D immersive environment, and you can do more things, especially that people want more of their lives to take care of themselves and not spend 20 hours at work. And so this really allows us to do that effectively and more efficiently at the end of the day. And so we encourage people to learn about it. Just like when the dishwasher came out, people were like, oh no. Just like when the ATMs came out, oh no, this is the same thing. And even more recently, people were saying, oh, not crypto. And now the government and everybody else has jumped on board. We're all for it. And so don't be afraid of these things, embrace these things and learn these things and understand that time is our only competition. And that is what AI, that is what metaverse allows us to do, is get back our time to do the things that we want to do with the people that we want to do it with.
You know what's so fascinating, David? And I'll just cut right in just for a second. I was just going to say, like, how do you know which trends are going to take off and which ones aren't? Because like NFTs didn't take off. Chat GPT, oh my God, it's exploded. And now I don't have to write speeches in the same way I would have ever had to write them again. So it's just really fascinating. Like, how do we know when we're jumping on a trend or the next big thing? Like, is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? Like, how do you guys know, or how do you forecast?
Well, I'll share.
Go ahead, love.
I'll share this. A lot of people think like, okay, so the metaverse was very big in 2020, 2021, right? And if you talk to some people who are very Web3 oriented, they're like, the metaverse is played out. And just like you shared, NFTs are kind of died down. This is what I will share because I do a lot of research on the financial side of things in our financial systems, which ties to everything because again, follow the money. Everywhere is about money. So the NFTs and metaverse had a boom back in 2020, 2021. But what the kicker is that you didn't have the peanut butter and jelly to hold the two sandwiches together, to hold two pieces of bread together. You didn't have the mayonnaise and the ham and cheese to hold it together. You just had two pieces of bread and they worked and they were fine, but they weren't all that thrilling, right? The kicker is the finance structure called fintech. The financial technology behind all of this is that NFTs will be the way of our life. And the reason I mean that is because what NFTs did back in 2020 and 2021 was just about be a part of my community, buy this NFT and have these access to this, JPEG artwork and maybe to my metaverse world. That was the playing around of it. But the structure of it is to be smart documents, smart data. So our houses, all of our everything will be on tokenization and into NFTs, which is a non-fungible token to basically showcase and prove ownership. So let's talk about the house purchasing process. Right now, David and I sold our house in 2022. We, paid our real estate a lot of money, our real estate agent a lot of money that David's still mad about today.
Yeah,
$25,000 to be exact.
Oh, I know. It's just ridiculous, the whole agent process. I can't. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
It is. And so that process that we're talking about, that is so excruciating. It sucks. It's got to prove who owns the house. It's got to get down to the county assessors. We got to have a, assessment of the property.
Yeah, you go through all these middlemen to do what you do yourself.
And Web3 NFT blockchain, because blockchain is the ledger that the NFTs live on, which is a public ledger that everybody can see. I'm not going to know exactly who Theresa Carpenter is, but you're going to have an identity of a series of numbers. And underneath that, your house or your Airbnb or your bank account or your investments, all of this information is going to be tied to your single not blockchain, but identity. And if you purchase a house from David and Tara, we're going to be like, well, this is the house. They're going to pull up the NFT. This is the serial number on the house that belongs to the NFT. We see that it is owned by David and Tara, and it's going to be an immediate transfer. The moment that the funds will be done through cryptocurrency, because no longer will we have these big clearinghouses in the United States where the 4 top clearinghouses, which by the way, are in financial trouble trouble right now, and they're talking about how they might go under because of the financial strain that we are under right now with the inflation and all that. It's all tied together. And what happens is as we start losing these middlemen and cutting out these middlemen because of Web3, AI, NFTs, blockchain, fintech, all of this stuff structure. The thing is that what's come to forefront in 2020 and 2021 was just the kids out playing with the Legos. We weren't really playing with the full structure, because we won't be able to have the full structure until the United States government finalizes the regulations, which what David shared last week, they finally did a 180 on their heel, and now we're into regulation talks because they realize where we're going. And so it was kind of before its time, and people were playing with the idea. And so it gained a lot of popularity through the playing side of it. But for the actual utility structure of what it is meant for, it is going to revolutionize everything. And real estate's just one example of that.
That's fascinating, Tara. So you're basically saying that everything is going to be centralized.
It will be
everything. So your house, your bills, you're not going to have 6,000 passwords to access all of these different accounts. I mean, that to me sounds very appealing as a consumer. I don't know if as a privacy side, but I'm not as paranoid about that. I maybe ought to be, but that might, I don't know. That's a fascinating thought. I mean,
it's actually safer than traditional banking and what we do now, because the transparency and the authenticity. So meaning that you and I and everybody in this world can see the public ledger. You can't go into a bank right now and ask to see their ledger. You can't do any of these. I can't go into the DOD and ask for their ledger. They're going to give me a public facing one, but they're not going to give me a private one. And this ledger is going to be completely, everything will be showcased. And it won't be like, again, it won't be Theresa Carpenter. You're going to have an identity that will be hidden, but it is to the point where I wouldn't say it's not it's hackable safe. It's, it won't be hacked, but it'll be to the point where we will no longer have these data breaches we have. It's almost like you have your own personal vault, and in your own personal vault will be all of your NFTs for the property, the tokenizations, and everything that you own. That will be literally, you'll open it up and I say a cell phone, but it's not even going to be on a cell phone anymore. It's going to live in a public ledger, and it will be to where people can hold people accountable. So people will be able to say, oh, we saw a huge transaction that went from here to here, and this is the dark web, or this is bad. So what is this? And it'll start holding people accountable through a whole slew of things, which, to be very frank, not a lot of people love, because there's a lot of stuff done in the dark that people don't want to come to light. So
right.
And to your original question, right, of what made us go make this path, we always share with people facts over feelings. And a lot of the times we allow our opinions, we allow our way of thinking, our traumas, our dramas, our patterns, our programs to take over, and not understanding that just simple facts that 25% of Americans will be in metaverse by 2026. That's a fact. That's Gartner. Okay. The metaverse will be worth $1.5 trillion by 2030. They're saying that it's going to increase customer engagement by 70%. You're going to get a 60% loyalty of your customers, because we're all fighting over 30 seconds right now on our social media, where an average person, when they come into our Hello Plaza, they're in there 9 minutes. Imagine somebody being able to go through your biz in a box, your static website, all of these old traditional things that we're doing for 9 minutes. They'll know everything. Now just enhance that in a 3D dimensional world. Not only that, increasing your brand visibility by 40%. Me showing up, you showing up with your biz in a box, getting rid of that old-fashioned business card, saying, hey, here goes my QR code. Oh, by the way, my storefront is in the metaverse. The metaverse? I thought I needed the VR goggles. No, hit this button right here. Go from your phone. Go from your laptop. Go from your iPad. And they get to jump into this 3D immersive environment. And so this is where we share people the facts and not our feelings, because a lot of the times only 16% of people know about the metaverse. And a lot of us, when we do hear that, oh, it's the fun, it's the games, it's the sandbox, it's the Fortnite, it's the Decentraland. And we just did a tour on that. And this is night and day from that. And so this is where we get to sit people down and say, hey, look, this is where you're at right now. This is where we're going. Now that I've shared these facts with you, not just from David and Tara, but for some reputable companies, what you're going to do. And so this is at the point now that you know where are we at right now. And so, this is where we encourage people to make that pivot, make that transition. And we have a done for you system where people don't have to freak out. Like we were on a podcast yesterday and people were freaking out like, oh my God, I don't know about it. Even spelling metaverse wrong, right? And this is where we get to show them and teach them and do it for them at the end of the day. I
like it. So can you give me an example of how this would work? Like, can you walk me through like this virtual like reality? You're able, show me, like, tell me a story about how somebody could use this.
So yesterday, prime example, a lot of people don't know this. If you can see up at the very top, or you can on the screen, it says 7,771. That's our coins that people can actually earn every 5 minutes that they're in our metaverse. And so what we do is, hey, when you come into our metaverse and you stay in here for a certain amount of time, we can do a content creation for you. You can have a discovery call with us. You can get access to our Pivot membership for a month. We can build you an AI video. So we're gamifying our business for people to come in here and have fun, to where we literally can have people come in here and drive the golf carts, as you can see. You can do so. Go ahead.
BMW has a world, and you go in and you can test drive one of the motorcycles that they have, and you can earn coins, tokens, and that right there you can turn around and then trade in for service.
Okay, I see it. This is like everybody's personal virtual world. That's what this is.
Yes, these are different personal worlds, like what David's going over to our mall right now. So these are different personal worlds that are all interconnected. You can bounce between, like the Utah Jazz is in, to where they do the same thing. You can come in and play around with the players. They have the players of the avatars. Avatars of the players is what I'm trying to get out of my mouth. And so you can go in with them. Harley Davidson, they're coming in to do the same thing, to where you can test drive one of their motorcycles and be able to earn. And what happens is, while you're test driving it, you end up earning money or coins that they will then allow you to swap out for real world merchandise or services. Or whatever. So for instance, like, it's called gamification marketing. People want to feel like they're playing a game and not being marketed to in the traditional way. And while we were talking, it's going to be a matter of time before the U.S. military services are in here having a recruitment office and being able. Oh yeah, to be able to showcase, it's because it's going to be, as we talked about, the younger generation does not want to walk into the strip mall down the road and have a conversation with the recruiter down there. They're going to be in here playing, and the United States military branches of services will need to make some sort of gamification that will also bring knowledge. So these are gamifications, but they're serving knowledge. You think you're playing a game, but you're gaining knowledge. How many times do you remember when we were little, that when we were learning things, they would show us a cartoon or some form of video or something that was funny, that grabbed our attention, so we would learn about the hazards of touching a hot stove or playing with fire. But it was because it was presented to us through a comedy or a cartoon character, we were enthralled with it. Well, the younger generation now is going to be completely enthralled with this. Heck, to be very frank, we meet more baby boomers in the Web3 and metaverse space than we do younger people. The younger people are absolutely here. We meet them, but it's that baby boomers are in here in the droves. And I spoke with one baby boomer, and she says, I have been waiting 50 plus years for something like this, because I always knew we would get here, and I want to live She's like, I want to live in the metaverse full time. Now, that might be a little extreme for some people, but the fact is that even the older generations are getting very curious about what this is, because it is a new, we hear it all the time. I come and get in metaverse after my job, or I get home from my job, because it's my place to kind of come and relax and hang out with my friends. And my friends are all around the world, and so
fascinating. I knew nothing about this before this call. So I just want you guys to know, like, I may have heard the word metaverse. I didn't know what this does, but this is pretty cool. I had no clue that you could just create these worlds where you're basically learning. Now, my next question is, can you do this on a phone? Like, can somebody go on the metaverse from their phone? They can just go on here and scroll with their fingers and go through and find different rooms and play around with different things. I mean, the amount of learning that you would get from doing this is just, it's limitless when you think about it.
Prime example would be Miss Roberta Pacino, Al Pacino's sister. She's able to showcase her artwork from her Etsy store, from her fine wall art to her actual, you can book an appointment with her in here, and you can get her free calendar. And then as you see in the back, that's her Kiss of Fame podcast. So literally when you go to this Discover More button and you want to go visit her Etsy store, you literally click that button right here, right? This is View More. And then this will take you straight to her actual biz in a box that you have. So this allows people to go from 3D metaverse to 2D. So if somebody wants to go shop in her Etsy store, they could go straight into her biz in a box and purchase it. If they want to go to her fine wall art, she could be able to have them go straight to her biz in a box. And then, of course, she can have people come in here and literally have a conversation with her. So this takes it to a whole new level where I can share my screen. I can be able to turn my mic on in here as if we were talking. So literally we can get rid of Zoom. This does anything and everything we want to, and takes it to a completely different level where, we have our Mac leadership coaching, Miss Merlin. She's able to showcase her membership, her book, right? So she can come in here and do her book. Those of you that are authors, instead of doing a book launch at Starbucks or Barnes & Nobles that's in one location, Barnes & Nobles is going to charge you anywhere from $500 to $5,000. They're going to take 30% of that book sales, and you're going to have to pay for their staff. And so you do the math. It's going to be a little nothing where you can tell people, hey, come from all over the world and meet me in my metaverse store, and we're going to have a book launch. I can read from my book. I can showcase my book. I can do all of that. We just did one from Miss Crystal Bay as well. And so you think it can be done in here, just as we've done for Chef Andy, where he's able to showcase his pasta sauces. So people can come in here and purchase his pasta sauces that goes to his biz in a box, and he's able to do cooking shows in here as well. So instead of having people join him on a boring, crusty, dusty Zoom, he's now able to do cooking shows in here. And so it takes it to a whole new level. Like I said, us as adults, we've gotten to the point where we've just let life beat us up and we forgot the fun part. Now we get to bring it back and do exactly what we want to do.
Like Miss Roberta. Oh, I was going to say, just from Miss Roberta, when she did her podcast last Saturday, she had a couple of folks from the Norwegian area of the world. She had a couple of people from Australia, mainly, us, obviously in Mexico. We were, helping her do all the technical side of it. But, we can be around the world. I mean, you're in the UK right now and we're in here. So.
Mm-hmm. My next question is, when you're doing a podcast from the metaverse, does it show the screens of the faces of the real people, like the way I can see you up there, Tara, above me, and I can see you down there, David? Yes. How does that part work where you want to see somebody's face?
Yeah, you can show.
You can.
Go ahead, love.
Go ahead, love. You can.
Oh,
I literally...
he has a slight delay. There's a way up at the top where you have mute, where your microphone, and like he's showcasing the tools right there. You can go live and a little circle pops up and it's your face. So it would basically be my face right above my avatar. So you get the avatar, but right above. So if the avatar moves, you go with them. So you're not, and it's really cool because some people love that. And then other people just don't want to get ready and have to be camera ready. So
There's a lot of people that don't want to be a face with a camera. So no, I totally get it. But wow, I think that'd be the one thing that I'd want to improve down the road with metaverse is I love the fact that I'm here, but I'd love it if I were like using my little arrows here and I was driving Theresa to just go across the screen and go through her store and point out things at the store. And oh God, this is just so cool. Something I never would think of.
Your reaction right now is what everybody has is that they hear it, they understand the concept, but they're like, it's kind of like when we went from the radio to the television, like okay, yeah, I get the fact that it's like a radio with a visual picture, but until you saw the television, you're like, oh, now I get it. And every time we take someone in here and showcase this and say, now you can, now it's like the child imagination is all of a sudden engaged. And it's like, there's so many thoughts and ideas because it's limitless. Like just because we have this set up this way, like we have another counterpart of ours who he runs music, like he's a big music producer. And so he has the Music City, and he has like where he does full on concerts, all of this. And so it is just whatever you can imagine
you want it to be. Yeah. No, it's a cool idea. I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've never seen anything like it. And I think I missed that whole part of the invite where it said metaverse. And when David sent it out to me, just because if it's something you don't understand or don't know, you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, they'll tell me if I need to know about it. But, and we are, it is at the beginning. Mass adoption is not 100% here, but we will be mass adopted within the next couple of years, less than 2 years, less than 24 months. You're going to have mass adoption. By 2030, I say grandma and grandpa, but the baby boomers are already on. And so I always liken it to the fact that all of a sudden in the past 5 years, especially since 2020, grandma got an iPhone so she can now, start, FaceTiming everybody. And that is mass adoption. And so grandma, now that she has an iPhone, it's a simple tap of a button, whether you're from your phone, whether you're from a tablet, like an iPad or something, or your laptop or a computer that you're on right now. You do not need to have VR headsets. It will be to the point where VR headsets will no longer be, and we will just have wearables. Like think of an Apple Watch that you have a hologram that pops up. That is where we're going to be, where we are going to be full AR. And it is where I'll say this, and I'll bring this back to the military, is that they already have these technologies that we don't know about,
Right.
And
For
so
sure.
this is only where we are going. And the reason why we know that is because what is in the movies is, a lot of people think that's not what's so, but a lot of times there's some truth associated with some of this.
I hear you.
We see. And so this is where, we will be fully implemented into what you see on the Mission Impossibles and things like that, where we have these wearables and that it will be so integrated in our life, like our phone is, because 90% of our business is done on these things right now. It's our phones, if not more. And our phone is the new pager. And it is just right now, it is connecting people from Web 2 to Web 3. And that's the beauty of metaverse. In like some worlds, not all worlds can you access from your phone, but this one, obviously you can, is where you're able to come in and utilize the technology you already have in your hand instead of having to go out and buy whatever it is, a VR headset or whatnot. And so that bridging the gap and making small movements. That's why I say most people don't realize they're already utilizing Web3 technology, because it was Web 2 and Web 3, the same companies, for instance, PayPal, Stripe, Venmo, Cash App, they're already starting to tie into the Web 3 on the backside. But they're a combination of Web 2, Web 3. And we on the front end, where things are instant, like if I sent you $100 on Cash App, you'd have it instantly. That is the Web 3 side of things. But the Web 2 on the backside is still making the connection. And that will be what will be changing over the next 24 months as we have regulations come in. Again, it comes back down to those finances, that fintech, which is financial technology. And we can't move around this world unless we have governing regulations. So that, especially when it comes to money, so that way we can have more immersive environments and experiences, the word I was looking for.
And the great thing, and the great thing about this also is prime example, right? Is not only, this is where we share with people, collaboration is the new currency, where you see all these different business owners that are in here, and somebody might come into the metaverse to come see, Chef Andy's amazing sauces, but they're taking a tour of everybody else's products and services as well. So this is where we all come together and we build together, and your friends are my friends, and now we all become friends. And just the old mall concept. You went to the mall for a CD, but you came out with the shirt, you had some lunch, you maybe got some jewelry, and now it's the old-fashioned ways we bring back, but now you don't have to get off your couch. And so this really allows us to showcase our business and our brand. As you see, this person is doing back here, right? They started out in Miss Cleo's.
That guy.
Yep, they started out in Miss Cleo's, and now they're looking at, Miss Astonishing Pearls. And so this is where we share with people, we have to get rid of the old-fashioned ways of you do you, I'ma do me, and let's see who gets to the top. This is where we get to collaborate together, and we all get to win, especially as we move to a global economy, to where AI allows us to translate to Spanish, to German, to Asian, to all these different languages, and now we're communicating at the speed of thought.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate, because I know you're going to have these people who are going to ask you this question. So what about the fact that this might take away the face-to-face and the meeting up in person and the relationships that we can have with each other when we're together and we're holding space next to one another? What would be your response to that, David?
Facts over your feelings, and what your comeback might be is that you get a 50% increase in engagement utilizing this 3D immersive environment. Let alone when we've had people in here, we've had people say, hey, this is even better than my LinkedIn audio room. This is even better than my Zoom. This is even better than my morning meeting, because you see how when you jumped in, it gives you a completely different experience. And once again, you can have your camera on at the top, or if you do want to have your visual effects, you can turn your camera on and you can have your camera in here. So this literally replaces your Zoom. At the end of the day, you're using Zoom, you should move over to the metaverse, because when I showcase this compared to just Tara, go back to the regular, go back to all three of us on the side. This is boring.
Yeah. I hear you. And then the thing is that this is just, like you said, this is just a different way of doing a virtual meeting or a virtual get together. And so I think that we all realize that, I can't live on the internet all day long. I can't live on podcasting all day long. At some point, you have to supplement and do other things too, and do the face-to-face as well. But this can also be a place to gather those in virtual contacts and hopefully bridge them into real life contacts. I mean, that's what you would ultimately want in some of these things. And you might make a friend in the Netherlands that you wouldn't have had before. And then the next time you go on a cruise ship to the Netherlands, maybe that's a person you'll sit and have some coffee with.
And guess what? We're already doing it. We're already in these LinkedIn rooms. Us as business owners, we have customers that are all around the world. We don't see them face to face. We get to utilize Zoom. And so when we say these things, this is where we have to really think of. We're already there now. We're already immersed in a metaverse on our phone.
Oh, I know. I do all my podcast scheduling, all my networking, everything. I probably do maybe 5% of my podcast stuff is done with an actual desktop. 95% of everything I do for this podcast, other than going live, I use a desktop to go live, but that's about it. And I can use this to go live too. I have done it a few times, but yeah, we're already using our phones to do everything anyway. This is just taking what we're already doing. Okay, you've bridged that one. You've basically just said you're taking what you're already doing and putting it at another level.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head because we have gained so many friends and people around the world. I mean, we have friends all through the United States, and like you said, we have friends over in Australia now. We have friends in the UK. We have friends up in the, Netherlands area. And really it comes down to the simple fact that we would have never met them outside of being in a virtual world. And we've asked them the same question about, like meeting face to face. And they're like, why? When I can sit here on my couch in my underwear or whatever they're sitting in, I don't want to know, but, and be able to have full on conversations as if you were, with your neighbor. And here's the beautiful part about it. And this might, alarm some people, but when you're ready to go home and be done, you just turn it off. Bye, guys. And you just turn it off, and you don't have to kick nobody out of your house. You don't have to be like, trying to get away from the neighbor, be like, okay, I think I hear my phone ringing or whatever.
Yeah.
There is the ability to just say, okay. And I also share this, wherever we go in this world, we kind of sometimes meet people that might be bullies. We'll just say it like that, right? They might just not really like us, or, they might just have whatever traumas in their life, and it's, they're taking it out on everybody else. The beautiful thing about metaverse is that when you do meet someone that is maybe not the nicest to you, you can distance yourself, remove them, and get away. And in the real life, it's a little harder to get away from people, especially when you don't have control over what someone else is doing. And so
That's true.
There's going to be pros and cons to everything,
For sure.
But it is the benefits of, I think, in my mind, and David, we understand the benefits outweigh the cons just because of the opportunity that we all will be able to have by taking advantage of technology. Again, if you would have talked to me in the mid 90s to late 90s, and I could have, taken advantage of Google or Microsoft or any of these companies that are major companies today and said, hey, do you want to, be invested in on their stock, or do you want to, I would have said, heck yes, because now we know. And this is another wave of web. It was the wave of the internet last time, and now we're, the wave of Web3. But essentially, at the end of the day, this is a great opportunity for people to really be able to get a part of something before it is mass adopted. And again, like they say, first to market always means something. First to market always holds some value.
Right. I mean, I'm the first of the military podcasters or the first active duty military podcasters to really adopt podcasting. And all I'm going to see coming after me is more and more. And especially with these younger digital influencers on Instagram and TikTok, from the military side, they're everywhere. And they're looking at me and they're like, wow, we can't believe that you're doing this as a more senior officer. And all I say is that I know this is the future. Talking like this, communicating this way, using these tools, being active on social media. One of my biggest pet peeves is when one of my colleagues or older colleagues says to me, oh, I just don't have time for Facebook. And it's the same, it's equivalent, David, to your metaphor about the dancing. It's this like way of like basically saying, oh, I can't do that. I'm just too good for that. It's really what they're saying is I'm afraid of that. I don't understand that. So I'm not going to use that. And it's just, I can see right through it when they say it, but
they're consumers.
They're spying. And I know this because I can see them on my
that part.
Yeah.
I guarantee if you went to their screen time and checked out their little back channel, their screen time of where they're spending their time, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of that will pop up. And I know that because my father is the most non-technological person on planet Earth. And he's watching TikTok. So it's not that we don't have time. We're being entertained. And that's why we share with people, you're already in metaverse. When you sit down on your couch and you go put on your TikTok, that's a world that you've entered into. And you're scrolling through these feeds and you're doing all of these things. That's a metaverse. We're just now taking it to where it's an immersive 3D experience where Instagram, Facebook are already in here where you can come into Metaverse through your VR headsets and do that same experience. And so this is where we share with people, it's already here. This isn't a concept that David and Tar are just bringing out of nowhere and it's just magically just appeared. It's here.
Yep.
And it's important for us to educate the community to understand why it's going to stay. Because like you shared, well, the NFTs already came, the, metaverse has kind of already come. It's important to connect the dots. It really, the dots being connected to understand why this is a long-term and not a short-term, just fun thing. So
no, I think that's really important. And I appreciate the explanation because I definitely don't necessarily think I'm what you call an early adopter, but I'm definitely an adapt, probably like that second stage. There's this diffusion theory, if you guys have heard of that. And I think I'm probably in like that second stage where as soon as I see like people like yourself or a few people jumping on it, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm usually in front of the people that are coming behind that aren't adapted to it yet. And that's how I feel what I've been able to do with social media. But you are absolutely correct about those people who I don't know, poo-poo these kinds of things. And then, oh, by the way, they are the same ones that I call the lurkers that don't engage. It's like kind of being in the, you want to sit at the cheap seats or do you want to be in the arena? Well, I'd rather be in the arena. I don't need to sit at the cheap seats. So,
yeah. My mom's a lurker. My mom has a Facebook and she knows what everybody's doing, but you never know what she's doing via Facebook because she don't post nothing. But
right.
It is that mentality and that kind of.
Ms. Theresa, is there anything else you wish we would have asked you that you want to answer before we get out of here? And enjoy the rest of our amazing day. If not, then please let the people know about your amazing book. Let people know where they can find you at, and any other information, what you have coming, your next podcast. Take it away, ma'am.
Awesome. Well, my book was about 2-3 years ago, but I still enjoy talking about it. It was probably the catalyst that started me on this podcast journey, and it's called Complicated Alliances. And it's the story of a few of us, people who serve, and mostly military spouses, and their journey and how they're able to continue to balance their relationships with serving in the military or married to one who serves. And so thank you to Dr. Karen Hills Pruden for the opportunity to be part of that anthology. I definitely credit that leg up as she gave me with putting my confidence to where it is now and getting this podcast off the ground. Secondly, yes, please check out the Stories of Service podcast, SOS for short. You can find it anywhere where you listen to podcasts. You can find it on my personal YouTube, my Facebook, as well as my LinkedIn. I am now 2 seasons. I'm finishing up season 2 right now. I'll start season 3 this fall. And I'm still playing around with what my new theme is going to be, if I'm just going to kind of extend on the theme of change agents and just keep going along that path, or if I'm going to try to get some bigger, more prominent names. There are some people I have in my head that I want to pitch to. Don't know if they'll answer my emails or not, but that's something I might work on this summer and bring some of those people to the show. Other than that, I'm moving stateside in the fall. I'm not ready to be too public about it just yet, but I'm very excited to take another duty station and another military job. And just please continue to follow me along. And thank you so much, David and Tara, for this opportunity to be on your show and to introduce my audience to the metaverse.
You are very welcome. We are so appreciative to have you. We are so proud of you, not just talking about something that you were going to do, but actually getting up and doing it and walking the walk. That's the biggest thing to David and I, is to see people that really, we love listening to your ideas, but we really love watching you do it. And that is
being consistent.
Showing up for yourself. So we're proud of you. We are so humbled by, you being able to be on our show, just because at the end of the day, all walks of life have a great story to share, and you sharing from the side of maybe a military point of view, also on your personal side, but being able to share that opens that up. And I think I'll say this, what you are doing, being a leader within the podcasting community as an active member of the military, allows us as a community that is not a part of the community, military community, to be able to kind of feel like we can relate. Because I think there's some sort of, there is a break there that because we haven't walked your shoes, but being able to listen to these stories that you're having and you're showcasing really brings in the relatability and bonds us together a little bit more as a community. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So until next time, you guys know the drill. Love,
Kindness,
integrity,
but most importantly,
consistency,
and commitment.
and until next time, toodles.
Thanks for being here, everybody. See you next week.